Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole and it's by user TrickOrTreatTA. Am I the a-hole for choosing my budget over my boyfriend this Halloween? I need some perspective here. This whole thing is so out of control. So I, 28 female, own my house and my boyfriend, 29 male, moved in January this year. We had a ton of early money arguments and agreed that we would keep to a household budget. Also, he agreed to pay down his credit card debt. I have more flexibility in my personal spending than he does. Early after we moved in, my boyfriend told me that as a kid he always wanted to live in one of the houses that for Halloween were totally decorated for trick-or-treating and handed out full-size candy. Here's where I messed up. I took this as a comment and not a plan. When the end of September came, we went to the Halloween store and he was under the impression we had savings for this. I didn't know. We go over the monthly budget together and it was never listed. When he found out that there were no Halloween savings, we had an argument. Afterward, I talked to friends who all said he had talked about trick-or-treating extensively and how much it meant. I chalked this one up to a misunderstanding on my part. So I came up with $500 of my money and went to him with an apology. He decided to buy just one big Halloween piece, an animatronic clown, and some lights. It burned through the $500. Plus, he put a little on his own credit card. He wanted another big piece and was mad that I wouldn't put it on my credit card. I asked if he wanted to put up some handmade decorations or spider webs, but he said it would look cheap. A few weeks later, we had a fight over candy. He was still stuck on buying full-size bars. We easily get over 250 trick-or-treaters and I said we just don't have that much money. So we got the bulk bags of good small bars. I also had these little coloring books for the allergic and diabetic kids. Jump forward to Halloween. Early kids show up and he is letting them grab handfuls. I remind him we have a ton of trick-or-treaters coming and he got really annoyed. I ordered a pizza for us that night. So I get it and go inside for about 10 minutes. By the time I came back out, the trick-or-treat bowls were empty. He had been dumping a third of a bowl in each kid's bag and had given out all the coloring books to whatever kids came along. He told me that I'd have to go run out and buy more candy on my credit card. I said I wasn't going to do that and it wasn't my fault he just handed out 20 pounds of candy. He started yelling right there in front of the kids and I told him to come inside. He responded that he wasn't going to stop trick-or-treating even if there was no candy. I told him to have fun with the clown and went inside. He came in 15 minutes later, then he demanded that I leave for the night so that he could clear his head. He argued it was fair because I had already eaten and it was my fault that trick-or-treat was ruined because I'm cheap. I offered the rest of the pizza to him and he refused. He left and went to a friend's house and I guess they spent the rest of the night drinking, handing out trick-or-treat candy and texting me about how awful and cheap I am. Am I the a-hole? Well, OP, it doesn't sound like you're the a-hole, it sounds like he's the a-hole and that you're the one that knows how to plan a budget. So he thinks that just by telling you something that he likes, it's gonna be automatically accounted for even though he went to the budget with you and he never said anything about it. He should have actually said, hey, if you agree with me, then I'd like to include a line item in the household budget so we can save for Halloween. I understand that it's something that I want, but if you want to chip in, that's awesome. If not, I'll just save for myself and I'll do Halloween. You sound like a person that would say, no, it's cool, let's do it together, but as long as it's planned and it's accounted for, then it's all good. But no, apparently he decided that you were going to be the adult and he was just gonna have fun. And when that didn't work out, he started gaslighting you and guilting you into paying for what he wanted. On top of that, not only does he start screaming at you in front of other people, but he also demands that you leave your house because he needs to clear his head. Man, this guy is incredibly entitled. Are you sure he's 29 years old and a functioning adult? Because it sounds to me like you're really carrying all the water here. OP, if you want this relationship to work and not want to rip his head off and kick him out, I think you need to sit down with him where he begins with an apology and then he acknowledges that planning and follow through is the way to go instead of just wishful thinking. But if instead he just keeps on ranting and gaslighting you and calling you cheap for ruining Halloween or whatever, then you gotta cut him loose. And what is your judgment in this situation? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what their judgment was. Solo Throwaway 254247 says, his plan, his savings, period. He shouldn't have planned with your money in mind. You did nothing wrong. You were way more gracious in your handling of the situation than he deserved. And now that he's gone, are you sure that you want him back? Maybe you guys moved in together too soon. Not the a-hole, but he is. He didn't save for his plan and expected you to pay. He gaslit you into thinking that you messed up somehow. You didn't. The only mistake that you did was having him as a boyfriend and then let him move in with you. You shouldn't have listened to his friends. Another mistake there. Also, paying for any of the stuff. Not your monkeys, not your circus, as the saying goes. What you taught him is that he can guilt you into submission, and he will keep doing it as long as you let him. He's a walking red flag, and you will keep messing up if you don't see that. He guilted you into fixing his mess. That still wasn't enough for him, and he wanted you to put it on your credit card. He's in and wants to put you in debt over candy? In what universe does that make sense? He wanted you to leave your own house. How can you not see the red flags here? Ditch him and his crappy friends. Change the locks. Choose better next time. Make sure he doesn't have any of your financial information. Special Response 7372 says, wow, not the a-hole. Yes, there was some miscommunication, but you more than made up for it by providing $500. That should have been more than enough to deck the house out. And in reality, after this Halloween, you'd have known to budget more so you could add to the decor next year. His behavior and attitude in handing out the candy were absolutely gross and ridiculous. If he was so hell-bent on providing full-size candy bars, then he needed to have pulled money from his own pocket to do so. Instead, he demanded it from you as though you were an ATM. And to tell you to leave your own house? Hell no. If I were you, I'd rethink the relationship because it sounds as though the two of you do not share the same financial mindset. And Opie responds, he pretty much said the candy thing was because I had already ruined Halloween, which is the part to me that's really non-defensible from him. He acted maliciously and idiotically just to make more of an argument, pretty much. Cause somewhere there's a dozen kids who made out like bandits on Snickers and Reese's, so I guess there's a little good out there. Cake Eating Rabbit says, not the a-hole. It sounds like he isn't able to financially support himself. You already support him financially. You do more in the sense of organization, responsibility, and planning. He fully expects you to realize his dreams without having to lift a finger. Please tell me this guy at least does half the chores. Additional information from OP's comments. A lot of his debt is understandable. He spent part of his childhood in foster care and his parents kicked him out when he was 18 with nothing really. He went into debt early to pay for his basic needs and never really learned how to have financial literacy. Only when I pointed out did he start to pay more than the minimum on his debts and start to work his way out of it. He had a really toxic childhood and this is the first real stable situation. Apparently, trick-or-treating was the time he sort of got to see clean and stable homes, and he got more to eat out of that candy than he did at home. I really didn't understand how much it meant to him, but his friends are on me about it. After we had an argument the first month, I set up a monthly house budget that just covers communal things, and he has paid his half into the household fund every month, so half of the mortgage, utilities, etc. But because so much of his money is going towards paying his debt, I have a more flexible personal budget, and I put money into savings. But yeah, financially he pulls his weight and he spent the summer being compulsive about having a perfect lawn, so it's not like he is useless around the house. The neighborhood we live in gives out signs to put on your mailbox that make people aware that you have non-candy items for kids who can't have candy for whatever reason. Diabetes and food allergies are specifically listed as two potential reasons. I have the sign, and if someone asked, I had the books as an alternative. Last year, I had over a dozen families ask for a non-candy option, and it wasn't like I grilled them on their medical history as to why. It's just there when they ask for something else. Anyway, I'm sort of rethinking everything with everyone's comments. Alright, well, the community thinks that OP is not the a-hole, and we got a glimpse regarding their finances and how they budget. Now, on that point, one thing did stand out to me, and that is that he is paying half of the mortgage, but his name apparently isn't on the deed, or OP didn't say anything about that. He just moved in and started paying half the mortgage, utilities, and everything. I don't think that's right in any situation, unless his name is also on the deed, right next to OP's. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't pay OP anything. Like we've seen in other stories regarding this same issue, he should be covering at least all of the utilities or paying OP some rent or something like that. But it is OP's house, so it is her mortgage to pay. Now, of course, this doesn't take away that the boyfriend is the a-hole regarding this whole Halloween debacle. So how about we now move on with the update to see how this story ends, but of course before that, I'm gonna share with you another one of my playlists like this one that only has stories with updates on them that you can enjoy after this video. Now let's move on with the update. I posted in Am I the A-hole in early November of last year about something that happened with my boyfriend. He had spent a ton of money on Halloween decorations and blamed me for ruining trick-or-treating. Now, I wasn't sure where to post an update, so here I am. Everyone basically said I was in the right and said some truly dire things about my relationship. I won't lie, there was so much anger toward him, I sort of shut down. So I just basically logged out and decided to forget anything ever happened. We met a few days later as he had spent a few nights at a friend's house. I said that for things to continue, we needed couples counseling, and I expected him to set up the whole thing. He was surprisingly open to this and said he would work on it, and that is where things started to unravel. Our mutual friends had been really in his corner, bitching me out, but I found out the story that he had told them was way off from the truth. In his version, I prevented any money for Halloween, had gone cheap on the trick-or-treat candy, and was only handing it out to children I liked. Once they sort of heard my version, backed up with pictures and receipts, support shifted to me. In fact, his friends have been giving him a lot of ribbing about how he acted, which my now ex hates. In the meantime, he had been working on getting us counseling, but found that getting therapy on his insurance meant months-long waiting lists. So instead, he came up with this couples coach who was religious. I'm not religious and wasn't thrilled by this, but figured it was better than nothing. Our first meeting was only 3 days after I posted. One funny thing that came up was that my ex immediately handed over a printout of the household budget, and the coach praised it. But the coach thought my ex was the one who wrote it and that I was failing to follow it. So what followed was this weird thing where my ex wanted all the praise, but also wanted the coach to badmouth the budget because my ex hates it. It took the better part of the first session to explain to him the actual situation, and the coach was weird about the fact that it was the woman in the relationship dictating money, even though he liked the budget itself. This was a lot of issues later, actually. The next day, one of our friends found the Reddit post I made and sent it to my ex. All hell broke loose with him saying that I had betrayed his trust. Our next couples coaching session was all about that, and honestly, I felt terrible for airing his dirty laundry. The coach and my ex both crapped on me a ton during this session, saying that I had publicly humiliated my ex. Obviously, I'm updating, so I don't care about embarrassing my ex anymore. He will probably read this, but whatever. One thing that was seemingly positive at first about the coaching was the coach pointed out that my ex had never had the ability to have holiday traditions because of his upbringing. I genuinely felt bad about this, and rolling into Christmas made a huge attempt to incorporate him into my family's traditions, and to ask if there was anything he wanted to do. He responded by crapping all over my family's traditions, and his only contribution was to suggest something really extravagant that would have cost a fortune. I swear, he only did this just to badmouth me when I said no. This was all bookended by our twice-a-week visits to the couples coach, who I increasingly hated. He would go through super religious prayers and have issues with us living together before marriage. Neither my ex nor I responded positively to this, but my ex would get really into it when the coach got all misogynistic and would talk about my ex as the head of the household. When I said I'd prefer to change to a regular therapist, my ex said I was undermining his work of getting us help. There are a dozen little things that happened that should have made me break up, but last week was the real final straw. Ever since my ex found the original post I made, he has been obsessed with going through my phone. Because of my career, I wouldn't let him. I have access to a lot of sensitive information in regards to my work, and of course, he would have access to that on my phone. So I compromised that he could ask who I was texting, etc., and I'd show him at any point. This wasn't good enough. I don't know how he got into my phone, but he went through it fully and started raging out that I was keeping things from him, but none of it had any relation to him. Like, I had a group chat where we were planning a wedding shower for a friend. He's only met this friend in passing. He knew I was helping plan it, but was mad that I hadn't let him know every little detail. Specifically, we were surprising the bride by flying in her aunt, who she rarely sees. I wasn't contributing to this financially, just knew about it, and somehow my not telling him that specific little thing was me keeping secrets? We were still fighting over this when we went to a party with friends. Apparently, in digging through my old chats, he found where a friend of mine had confided in me about a tragedy she went through. Only her husband, her sisters, and I were really in the know. My ex got drunk and started talking about this loudly to her with her husband right there. Her husband told him to shut up, and my ex basically got all superior about knowing things and there not being secrets. It was very close to being a fight, so I told him to leave and not come back after that, and he seems really shocked we broke up. I'm still numb about all of this, but yeah, him? Never again. Well, OP, it took you long enough to get rid of him, but good for you. You're clearly not compatible people. Hopefully at some point he learns about financial responsibility, but it's not your problem anymore, OP. So here's wishing you all the best in the future, and thank you so much for sharing. Now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user AbleRelationship6808. Want us to look for problems to repair? Okay, we'll look for problems and repair them. This happened when I worked at the post office years ago. I was one of about 40 mechanics and electronic technicians on the 3 p.m. to 11:30 shift, whose job it was to fix the machines used to process mail. It was a huge facility with thousands of people working there. This might not seem believable today, but first-class mail had to be received, processed, and shipped out within 24 hours. Letters and packages start arriving in the afternoon. Sacks of letters and packages are placed on conveyor belts. Stamped mail is cancelled. All mail is sorted on machines, placed in trays for shipment to their destination, and placed on trucks for shipment directly to the destination post office or the airport. Mail came between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. and went out around 5 a.m. Up to 2.5 million stamped letters per day during Christmas time, but usually around 600,000 plus metered mail and parcels every weekday. Our job was basically to sit around, wait for something to break, and fix it as soon as possible so it would run to the end of the shift. The day shift would do a more permanent fix if necessary. That was our job: wait for some machinery to break and fix it. We sat in small groups near our machines and read, gossiped, or did whatever. One day, some big wig saw us and didn't like us sitting around doing nothing. Word came from management and we were told to patrol our areas and fix the broken equipment. Our chairs were taken away so we could not sit down. Cue malicious compliance. We did as we were told. We patrolled the building. If anyone saw something broken, we shut down the equipment and fixed it. According to safety regulations, we were required to lock out the power source with our individual padlocks and rope off the area. Hey, you 50 clerks, you need to move from under this conveyor belt so we can replace it. Of course, that disables part of the 6-mile-long system, so productivity is lost. Letter sorting machines with 14 clerks are shut down for minor repairs. Stamp cancelling machines? The same. productivity slumped and hundreds of clerks were required to work overtime that night and morning to make up for equipment being shut down for repairs. I'm sure the first night it cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime. After 3 days, our chairs returned and it was business as usual. And once again, management failing to see the big picture of how the process and the system works came back to bite them in the ass. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.